Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this weekly Ag Weather Update brought to you by the Farm Credit Associations of North Carolina. Well, some folks over in western North Carolina are still cleaning up from the icing event we had this past weekend. I got a couple of pictures here to show you some of the trees kind of bent over under the weight of this ice, and ice can get very, very heavy on large trees like this. If you accumulate a couple of inches of ice, we're talking about adding thousands of pounds of additional weight, so that's not an exaggeration. So that's why you can see some of the damage here. Well, that storm system that caused all of these problems across the Midwest and over there in parts of North Carolina, but really into Virginia up near DC, kind of took a track something like this. And that track is signaling a bit of a pattern shift that we've got to be talking about, because this particular event you see right here is going to change the way things are going to be behaving really over the next few weeks. The whole atmosphere is getting ready to shift, so we better get talking about this. So let's start off first with that 500 millibar flow pattern, and let's go all the way out for the next 15 days. Here are the main players that we're going to be watching. So as we animate this forward, let's get started here on Tuesday. On Tuesday, pay close attention to the West Coast, not the East Coast, the West Coast. You see, as we progress forward, look at this, Tuesday into Wednesday and finally into Thursday morning, we have a deep upper level trough that kind of comes racing in there toward the West Coast. Now, meanwhile, to start the week, temperatures are going to be cool here, but they're going to be moderating throughout the middle of the week. And that's all in response to this deep trough that's kind of digging here out west. And so you watch right in that area as that trough comes on shore there out west and then pushes here. Okay, now as that trough digs into Texas and Oklahoma, we'll be warming up here in the Carolinas, but this trough signals the next big system coming through that's going to be causing some major issues for much of the country and signaling that full pattern change that I was talking about. Now, this trough right now is going to be sitting in Texas and Oklahoma, producing a low pressure system and another big winter storm. And that particular winter storm is going to be moving up the East Coast and turn itself into a pretty powerful and large nor'easter. Now, let me show you what's going to happen here. As we push this through, see the trough digging there to the lower Mississippi River Valley and then racing on up toward the northeast? Watch what happens after that goes through. That big weather system goes through and the whole pattern shifts. Now, this is important to talk about because at this point, we've now occupied or allowed much, much colder air to occupy this section of North America. Deep trough starts to dig in through here. And what does that signal? That signals a very active storm track through the area that I'm kind of coloring in right through here. Meanwhile, the West Coast goes into split flow. And that shift, that change, is going to mean that if you're a snow lover in the Carolinas, well, I'm just telling you, get ready. Things are about to shift toward a much colder and potentially much more stormier storm track here in the coming days. So let's diagnose this. First of all, that big system we're watching next weekend is really quite textbook. You see, for these big low pressure systems that start in the middle part of the country and go racing off to the northeast, we want to see a large area of higher atmospheric pressure building here on the U.S.-Canadian border. That signals where our cold air is. We can see that using the 51-member ensemble. So this is 51 different simulations. By next Saturday, low pressure will be somewhere here in the mid to lower Mississippi River Valley, and it will be racing on up to the northeast. So while much of the next 5 days for the East Coast, for the Carolinas, will be dry, this upcoming weekend things will be quite stormy in this area. A lot of rainfall and potentially some snows in the higher elevations. And this is our setup. This is about as classic of a setup as you can get for one of these Midwestern storm systems that goes racing up the East Coast as a big nor'easter. So let's kind of take a look at this. Let's go ahead and get things out to about Wednesday of this week. Starting off the week is relatively dry. Higher atmospheric pressure occupies through Wednesday into Thursday. And it's going to be midday Thursday that we start to see our next system developing here in the Midwest and lower Mississippi River Valley. Now that's going to be bringing widely scattered showers by the time we get into early Friday morning to the Carolinas. So you notice this isn't a big event as we get into Friday. And that pushes out by the time we get through Friday midday. So this is out, 5 or 6 days now. Now notice this, by Saturday morning, a big low pressure system takes shape there in Oklahoma and Texas, and then it's going to be pushing on off toward the east. Now this is going to signal some pretty big snowfall in this area. But as we progress forward, look at the heavy rains that we're expecting there in parts of the Carolinas as we get into the day on Sunday, with the potential for some snows on the backside of this at the much higher elevation. We are going to have to watch for another cold air damming event. That's where that cold air comes sneaking down into this area, potentially setting us up with some more freezing rain. So all of that is on the table for this next weekend, really getting into next Sunday. Going to have to watch this one very, very carefully. Now, just to show you what we're looking at in terms of total accumulated precipitation through Friday, relatively light amounts, much of this coming on that system that gets over there around Thursday. But if we get through the weekend, look at how much more rain we're going to be adding to this. And don't forget, this will be the region we're going to have to watch for potentially some of that being snow, and watch out in this area for some of that cold air damming to sneak down again, potentially giving us another ice threat for next weekend. Now, that's a long way out in the forecast, but it's something I want you to be paying close attention to. So dry, relatively dry throughout much of this week, but then next weekend is where things really get going. Now, just to show you what the current model forecast is looking at in terms of track of the snow event. Now, don't look at this in terms of snowfall amounts. We're just looking at this in terms of the track. We can see that the heaviest snow is going to be staying somewhere in this area, with this potentially being a big nor'easter. Looks like the Carolinas are going to be staying out of much of this snow. In other words, this system's not dipping down like this and going to the northeast. It's going to stay in a track that takes it a little bit farther to the north. You see, when these storm systems dip south into this area, this is where things get really, really interesting for the Carolinas. But instead, this one's got a much more northerly storm track, which will spare us from having the really, really cold air get in there and the potential for some major snows. So it looks like all the heavy snow is going to be staying out of the Carolinas with this next system coming up. But this is where things really get changing. You can see that once I get you out here about the 23rd of January, we've allowed this trough to retreat to the west. We build a ridge out here going up into the Gulf of Alaska and then coming over here into British Columbia. And that cold air that was stuck up here in Canada, well, look at this deep trough that allows that cold air to finally just start to spread to the south and east. Now, what does this mean? After this pattern gets set up, we get a little bit of blocking over Greenland. We end up getting this deep trough that plunges in the middle part of the country, and that means this area is going to be active in terms of its storm track. So I think we are in for a very, very active wintertime storm track once we get beyond this week, starting at the end of this week, really lasting probably through the beginning of February. So get ready for this. It's about to change over and be significantly different. Now, what are temperatures doing? Well, we're going to be on a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Here we are getting into Wednesday. You can see the cold air coming in behind that first system here. So we kind of start off the week cloudy and cool, but by the middle of the week, look at this, we get this moderating effect coming in Wednesday really into Thursday and to Friday. And as that system comes in this weekend, it's going to do that on some pretty strong southerly flow. So even though it's going to be wet this weekend, it will be warmer than average. But you can clearly see what's waiting in the wings here. Some much cooler air is coming south, and let's just watch it kind of take over to start off next week and hang around through much of next week. You can really see that cold air coming in on several reinforcing shots. This takes you out to the next 15 days, and that pattern shift is on its way. So there's a pretty substantially good model agreement here that we need to be seeing, taking us over to that much cooler pattern. Okay, what I want to do to finish this up is I want to take you to South America, because that's the other major GROM region we're watching right now. You're looking at a map that shows you satellite-derived vegetation health index. So the closer you are to this part of the color spectrum, the healthier the crop appears from space. Now, remember, we're paying attention to this area. It's very hard to see in this area using this particular technique what the vegetative health looks like, because there's so much cloud cover, we get cloud contamination. But I want to look at this for another reason. This was 2018. This is 2019. See this down here? Reason why this looks so blue is we've had multiple fronts pass through this area, bringing in quite a bit of precipitation. And why I bring that up is because this has been the pattern we've been seeing, and this is the pattern we are expecting to continue to see through the end of January. This region in through here, where we grow soybeans, corn, and cotton, This area has been dry over the last month. We're expecting it to continue to stay drier than average through the end of this month, with it being much, much wetter in that same area that we've been seeing it be very wet there in northern Argentina, far southern Brazil, and Uruguay. So with that just kind of spells that South America, especially Brazil, has had a rough December and a rough end of December, I should say, and rough first half of January. And that is something we're going to have to watch very, very carefully as we progress into the end of January and the beginning of February, because we're harvesting that first crop of soybeans, and cotton will be going into this area, as will corn. And that will affect a lot of the agriculture that is related to what we're doing here in the Carolinas. So I'll keep a close eye on it for you, but this is certainly some adversity. We've already seen CONAB lower their estimates of soybean yields down 1.5 million metric tons, and that could be a very important player as we progress forward throughout the rest of the growing season in South America. So we'll keep a close eye on it for you and keep you updated each week. But with that, we're going to wrap up this forecast video. I want to thank you for your attention. Hope you look forward to our next update coming next week. Thank you.